Hey, it's Mad Master here. I'm just doing a commentary, vlog, video, podcast, whatever you want to call this. It's regarding the recent emergency that we are in as far as this virus. So, as you probably have seen, I have some conflicting opinions about everything that's going on here. I would say at this point in time, I'm fine to some extent with what's going on, like with lockdowns and social distancing. I fucking hate that word, social distancing. I can't wait till this is over. I hate that. So there is a contentious mindset, however, that I do have about some of this. And I'm just going to say that I am not certain what I believe with this whole thing as far as 100%, because it does seem like people, especially people in the West, the politicians, especially the United States, that's going to put it this way. America likes to have a crisis or a war against something, or this consciousness of like antagonism towards some type of enemy. And that's been going on since the beginning of America. So with the current crisis, you could see a lot of that. Even our president's language kind of refers to it like that. Now, something really bothers me about this whole thing more than me maybe just like having this really weird sense of unease with what's going on, like what may be going on behind the scenes or what's really going on and what's the cause. I was watching this interview with this guy. I think his name is Charles Eisenstein. He's like a philosopher writer. I'm going to put a link actually in the information about this video. So he was talking about like more subconscious stuff with regards to the virus. So like, what does it say about us as a culture or society? What is it, our reaction to it right now as opposed to previous pandemics or viruses and stuff. So, and he had some good questions and some good insights. And there were two other people, this is from the non-conspiracy people that have questions about this, because we can go to the conspiracy theories and talk about that, but some of the stuff in the conspiracy theories are muddled up with just nonsense. That's the problem. Part of it's nonsense and part of it's real with any conspiracy theory. That's why it appeals to a lot of people, because there's some truth to it. So I'm not going to even say the words because I don't want to get it flagged to this video, because who knows? They're all out to get me. The paranoids are even convinced the paranoids are after them. But a lot of non-conspiracy people that have questions about what's going on, neither from really a left-right, I guess you can consider Bill Maher left-wing ostensibly, but there's been people, and I'm going to put all the links in the description of this video, that have had rightful questions about this. So Bill Maher's take in a recent real-time video is, some of the media has just been totally insane about this stuff. So just the sensationalism and the negativity, which, believing in manifestation and stuff, I believe negativity can beget more negativity in the long run. So his video was absolutely awesome. I've always liked Bill Maher, and there's some stuff I really don't like about him sometimes, but this one he hit it out of the park. It was great. So that was his point. Edward Snowden, of all people. So he gave an interview to Vice recently, and he was bringing up some really good points about what may happen because of this virus and the response to it, which is pretty scary. So that brings me to my next point about this. It seems like, so I'm going to tell you about this thing. Imagine 20, not 1920, but 20 years ago, about 20 years ago, there was this thing that happened. Ooh, that sounded like someone's, there was this thing that happened. I'm making fun of the right wing, making fun of that, whatever. Ilhan Omar said there was this event and whatever. Yeah, there was an event that happened. It's true. And I'm not bashing her by making that. It was a parody of the parody. Anyways, never mind. So there was this event. Imagine what happened. Okay, so there was this thing, this terrorist attack, and a lot of people died, right? At first, they actually said 10,000 people died, but I think it was, 3 or 4. I think it was, how many? I don't know the exact number. I think it was 3,000 or 4,000, right? Both the Pentagon, the World Trade Center, both the World Trade Centers and everything. And then their impact, later on was bad too, with regards to all the environmental effects and people that got cancer from the sites, like the firefighters and stuff. So it was a horrible event. But what happened after that? Excuse me, I'm opening a soda, which I shouldn't be drinking, but whatever. What happened? So there was this group of people that said, we're fighting an invisible enemy. And this invisible enemy could be anywhere. And they could be hiding in plain sight. Anywhere you step. They could kill massive amounts of people anytime. So what do we have to do about it? This is what we have to do. We have to make sure the government can track where we go and listen to our phone conversations and do all this other stuff. Form these huge bureaucracies to fight this invisible enemy. So I wonder, to people, does that sound a little bit familiar? Is it just me, or do we hear a lot of talk about an invisible enemy right now? And if you want to fight the invisible enemy, you must submit to these new laws and these new ideas, these new rules, because otherwise you're putting others at risk, right? You're putting others at risk because this invisible enemy can be anywhere. So I hope I don't sound like a right-wing reactionary militia whatever person, but it's kind of funny because Democrats and Republicans both went with the Patriot Act, but a lot of people on the left were completely against a lot of what happened after 9/11 with with all the civil liberties and stuff that the government, the Constitution was being kind of trampled upon because of all these things. So right now there's the debate about, guess what? Civil liberties in the Constitution. And who is it complaining now? Well, the shoe's on the other foot. It's the right wing. And of course, the more whatever fringe, maybe it's the more fringe right wing or whatever, because back then it was the, people who were more like Ralph Nader or the Green Party or Democracy Now. People were talking about that, or Noam Chomsky or whoever. Now it's people on the right, even Fox News, even though they're more like in line with the president to some extent, they're talking about civil liberties. And that's kind of funny because, nearly 20 years ago, They were in support of suppressing civil liberties. But it's also funny from the other side, too, because there's this invisible enemy. And we're going to scare you with these headlines. We're going to scare you telling you that there's a lot of young people dying from this. And I've no doubt there's people that are young died of this. I don't know the numbers of young people that have died of it. But as far as I know, there are other diseases that are way worse for young people. The main thing with this, even with, without social distancing or whatever. So I think that because there is this hysteria and sensationalism, there's something that doesn't seem right with a lot of this. But that doesn't mean I believe it's a conspiracy. I think there's a lot of incompetence, honestly. And there's a lot of bureaucracy, and there's a lot of just people in these different mindsets and these different consciousness, whatever you want to call it. People of certain types of consciousness that, they're in their jobs for 30, 40 years, and they're they're told that it's a crisis, so they have to go with these scenarios, and this institutional lockstep that they push these ideas and these agendas. It's kind of like, like these people that are not for Medicare for all. It's not necessarily like that they believe that it's not a good thing, or that it's just that they're in this mindset, these different paradigms that they're in, that it's because of what they believe, what they've been brought up with and what they're into. And of course, the people in power aren't always aware of what they're doing or what they're up to. So to say that that's a very complicated discussion about this, but one of the things is that I read this book a couple of years ago. Actually, it was about a year and a half ago, about Vietnam. And it's called The Best and the Brightest. And really, you could say these people were just indoctrinated with these ideas. And it doesn't mean that all their agendas were nefarious. But if you look at it from the outside and look at what they were doing, of course, it seems like it's set up and nefarious, but they don't believe, the people that are doing it don't believe it's nefarious. They're just so in their paradigm and locked in it that they don't see the forest from the trees, or forest for the trees, whatever the phrase is. So that's basically what I have to say about that. If they did some introspection, or even tried to look in introspection, they would see what they're doing is bad or evil, quote unquote. But they're trying to do it for the greater good, or at least what they believe is a greater good. But there's also room for incompetence, and I think that's basically what happened in regards to the situation. I think, whatever happened in China, whatever you believe happened, if really a pangolin ate a bat and it was in some wet market and someone got it, or if you believe it came from a lab, something happened, or maybe not even in China. They're saying now, there's some scientists say this may have come from somewhere else. So that's part of the problem. There's these institutional bureaucrats that they're middlingly, they're not mediocre, but they're just, they've done their job so long. It's just like this thing that they're doing. And I'm speaking of some of the medical professionals that are in this. So it starts basically, there's a bunch of divergent people pursuing their own interests and own careers. And the same thing happened in 9/11, by the way, I should say. They're pursuing their own interests and own careers. They're divergent. And with regards to like the World Health Organization, their whole thing with China, which I think is a real thing. And then they say they give these guidelines, and then they back down on them. And it seems like everything changes every day with this whole thing. So, that makes me very suspect, and it makes conspiracy theorists suspect, but I don't think it's necessarily any one group of people trying to do this thing. I think it's just this event happened, and they're pursuing their own interests at the same time, if that makes any sense. Or they're trying to save their careers. So the thing happens, and the response is, don't wear masks, or there's no human-to-human transmission, or whatever the tweet from the World Health Organization said in like January or whenever. And then they change their mind, and then there's all this chaos. And then Trump says it's no threat, and then he finally realizes it's a threat, and he thinks then he still says it's political at a rally or whatever. So it just seems like it changes every day. The story changes every day. First it's going to be millions of people dead, even with the lockdowns and social distancing. I hate that word, by the way. I hate it so much. I'm so sick of it. Then they revised their numbers. They said they had the wrong model. Then they revise their numbers again. Then they say this. They say wear a mask. They say don't wear a mask. They say it's going to last until this date. Other people are saying, we need lockdowns for 18 months. Or social distancing for 18 months until there's a vaccine. And then, no wonder people think there's a conspiracy, because they don't know what the fuck they're doing up there a lot of the time. Now, I do think South Korea knew what the fuck they were doing, to some extent. I do think that Germany kind of knows what the fuck they're doing. To some extent, maybe less than South Korea, but they're doing pretty, I don't know about Sweden. I'm mixed on that. But, what are we going to do? So that brings up the whole thing about this whole thing. It's like people just don't accept that there may be a certain number of deaths, and I could get it. Some relatives or friends. Actually, I do have some relatives that did get it. They had a mild case, thankfully. People can die, and people will die. But is that worth destroying our civilization as we know it, and then using all these and thriving on this negativity and hysteria and death and horror to sell fucking ads for people to watch, and then just to give all this money to corporations or big pharma or whatever? Is that worth it to lie? I don't see this. This is not turning out so good. Now, I actually do like the president's phase plan. It was not the president's. Obviously, he can't fucking come up with that kind of shit himself, obviously. But his administration's plan, to some extent. And part of me, even though maybe I should be like this and take it more seriously and be scared. So I should need to be scared and take it more seriously, this invisible enemy, right? That's what people are saying. I should take this more seriously. This is going to be a long video. That's fine. Yeah, sure. I take it seriously. I believe in the lockdown for, a definite period of time, of course, not indefinite. But I accept that maybe there's some herd immunity that might have to be built up. Maybe we have to deal with things a little bit, And it sucks. It's horrible. But at the same time, it's like, There's all these studies coming out. Some of them might be politically motivated. I mean, that's the problem with this, is people are using this as a way to push their political angles and aims. So there's a few Stanford studies that have come out about antibody tests that 85 times more people are infected and likely asymptomatic than initially thought. Stuff like that. It's like, I think we were gonna say that we overreacted, even if it was a tragedy who died, just like with 9/11. We overreacted. Or that's not the right word. We didn't overreact. We reacted wrongly to these situations and treat them as in the way that we do things exacerbates the problem a lot of the time. There just needs to be innovative, thinking outside the box with these things, ways of doing things. And that brings me to my final point in this video. And this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, since this whole crisis started, is that, like I said towards the beginning of this video, the left is really dropping the ball with this as far as them being consistent with what they believe. And the right, obviously, is being hypocrites, of course, because, like I said, 19 and a half years ago, other than, I would say most of the right, like, Andrew Napolitano, Judge Napolitano, he's been pretty consistent all throughout every crisis and everything. He's a diehard constitutionalist. And obviously, I'm not really proud of some of my former support of Ron Paul, but Ron Paul does bring up some good points, even though he's kind of in the conspiracy camp more. But yeah, I mean, the left is responding to this crisis like the neocons and the right responded to 9/11. And that's a really controversial thing to say, but I just seem to remember a lot of the people I talked to, even originally, they were never, maybe it took a while. Like, originally people were on board with, going to Afghanistan and stuff, and then people saw the light. But there were a lot of the same people that saw the light, quote unquote, or were against the trampling of civil liberties back then that won't blink an eye at what's happening now. That doesn't mean I support people going back to church right now or, anything like that. I just mean on a philosophical, sociological, philosophical point of view. If people all agree, all they're going to do is going to go in a church and not socially distance. Socially, I fucking hate that word. I'm sorry. I can't emphasize that enough. They're not going to socially distance. They're going to go to a church, and they all sign a waiver. They don't bring any children, by the way, or they avoid children, even though children, as far as I know, they're pretty nil as far as the deaths that have been from that. Doesn't mean there haven't been deaths. It just means there's not been that many with children. And as a matter of fact, one of Bill Maher's things was the young people that have died from this, like more people died from the flu last year than died from the coronavirus. Oh, I almost said it. The C virus. Oops. But yeah, I mean, if that's true, I'd have to do a little more research. Actually, I do want to find out about that. So that's really, anyways, avoid children. Okay, so these people that want to meet in church, they all sign a waiver saying, they're going to keep track of each other. There's some kind of tracking thing. They're all going to quarantine, maybe have someone designated to get their groceries for them or something. But they all agree, and leave it at the door or something. They all agree to do that, but they go to church because that's their right to assemble. That is a constitutional right. So it's very troubling. I'll say that. I'm agreeing to the lockdown, but it's very troubling giving people the right to lock people down. So these protesters, other than being dullards for supporting Trump and not seeing that he's part of this whole system anyways, are, a lot of them have some good points. And, one of the good points was, I forgot what it was something about you quarantine the sick, but if you're quarantined, you're sick. If you're locked down, you're a slave, or something like that. I can't remember the quote. Yeah, I'm gonna look this up because I think this. There's live science. Oh, this is the first thing. So I looked up Google death rate under 30, the C virus. And then C virus death rate may be lower than previously thought is the first thing. Okay, so I said 0.7%. This article says 0.66%. If counting the mild symptoms, yes. Whereas only 1% of the people under 30 were likely to be hospitalized. This is from March 31st. Wasn't that long ago, but let's see what this says. Yeah, there's more deaths, but doesn't have age in deaths. Yeah, there are a lot of people dying from this, but okay, now there's another NC virus death rate is lower than previously reported. Okay, so people are admitting that this is the case. Okay, here we go, stats news. All right. It doesn't really give it. Yeah, so anyways, we know that young people very rarely die from it. I mean, young kids or younger people. Average age is like some of it's 60, depending on if they, smokers. Most of the people that died in Italy were above 80, I guess, but yeah, it's just, here we go. Here's the analysis. I'll find it. Not invincible. Of course not. Dropping to 0. Okay. Well, I don't know. We don't have a lot of data. So, point is that, here we go. This is March 23rd. Okay. No fatalities in Spain as of March 23rd. I mean, of course, it's April 21st, but in Spain, which had a ton of cases earlier on. No fatalities under 10. Okay. Well, I wish there was a more updated article. However, that shows that a few people got hospitalized. 1.6% of the cases under 20 got hospitalized in that late March date. %, okay, 20 to 44.1%. Well, hospitalized things. So yeah, I mean, it is obviously it's bad. Let's see what this says. 20 to 44.1% fatality rate. So my whole point is that we have to be. Oh, it's like 10 point. Okay, 10 point for that. I mean, we have to be careful with this whole thing. It's just. It's ridiculous to not try to look at this with a different perspective, and with perspective. So, the whole thing about these alarmist points of view are just. I mean, the extreme alarmist point of view is probably almost just as bad as the other side of the pendulum. And that's, people need to think about. So if they're, all these headlines about someone happened to be 25 and they died from the virus, and it's horrible, but it's like it gives the impression that like no one can escape the death. It's like, well, the chances are still there. Millions of people die from cancer. Millions of people die from tuberculosis, AIDS still. Just, I'm sure in other, mostly other countries now because they're poor, of course. We don't really, America doesn't really care about poor countries of color that much. Comes down to it, they didn't, it's just like a lot of this stuff is just revealing about the id and the psyche of the psyche of America. It's revealing. It's honestly a clusterfuck. So that's my whole point, is that we have to look at these things and try to have a calm, rational perspective on it. So I do like the wave thing, the phase theory of lockdowns where, there's certain criteria that have to be met to some extent. Now, if that doesn't work and the lockdowns continue, then at a certain point, I just think we should put caution to the wind, because we're going to destroy our civilization. I don't know if we still destroy civilization, but it would destroy our society, and destroy a lot of our society and civilization in so many ways that it would be worse. So that's all I'm saying. And we just need to watch our thoughts, watch the way we think of this. And the news just needs to be, the news there should be like there used to be the fairness doctrine back in the day. Maybe there used to be a good news doctrine, like for every piece of negative reporting. This sounds like authoritarian kind of bullshit that I'm kind of contradicting myself by saying this. But I'm just saying, in an ideal society, maybe we would have an automatically, self-policing journalist apparatus where every piece of negative hysteria, sensationalist garbage that they write, or headlines, that's what Bill Maher was talking about, was the headlines for some of this stuff. Everything they write like that has a corresponding piece of positive news. So, I don't know. I hope we all get through this better than before. And one more point is that I don't think that we're going to be wearing masks forever. I don't think people wear masks. I go around town where I live and people are not wearing masks. Maybe 2 or 3 out of 10 people are wearing masks, even now, after my state supposedly reached its peak. So that is something we can't just turn off our need for affection, touch, social interaction. It's naturally inherent in humans to have that. So, you can read like books by Daniel Goleman or others that talk about this. It's like part of our neurology that we have close proximity to other humans. And that's what makes us human. And in America, the mask thing, I'm just going to go on off a little tangent about the masks. I don't think people are ever going to, unless it was really bad, like the movie Contagion, where it was like 26% of the population died or whatever. If it's even lower with all the asymptomatics I hope they test. That's one thing I have to say. I hope they test a lot more people with the antibody test. Especially if those studies come out where it's even lower than we thought, even though it's very communicable, and I know that, but people are not going to wear masks in America because we're very fixated on youth beauty, superficiality, looks, a lot of stuff like that. So now somewhere, in Asia, their social norms are a little different. So that's why you see all these people wearing masks, these other places. I don't think America's going to go along with that ever, unless there was some kind of law, which there are in some places right now. But that's kind of my rant for this whole thing. I don't know the solution to this. I just think we need to be careful. We need to put a spotlight on any government or corporate official or apparatus or entity that will use this as an opportunity to, increase their power or, promulgate their power, in other words. I think that would be, the onus is on the American people to do that. And of course, these protests in these states, which there's one actually in my state, I think, coming up. It doesn't really solve the problem, even though it's a symptom of the problem that we're having, which is the mass hysteria and possible overreach in of the government. I believe there has been some overreach with this in certain ways from a constitutional perspective. Now, I would rather people be honest about that and say, yeah, I know, during 9/11 or after 9/11, I was one of those people that talked about the Patriot Act and how terrible it was, and look at what all these wars in the Middle East actually made the terrorism worse. I know that, but still, I think we should lock down everything and wear face masks for 5 fucking years and not date only on FaceTime and then send your sperm in the mail to. Well, I said that in another video. But I don't know. It's just fucking madness. So this is a rant that I had to do because I feel like talking about this, and we need to take a fucking good look at what happens as a result of this. But thankfully, they're talking about opening shit up. Is that going to cause more death? Yeah, it will probably. Yeah, but we need to see, if we sacrifice liberty for safety, like the possibly out of context Benjamin Franklin quote, we need to think about that. People die of all sorts of things all the time, but there's not a lot of media coverage of it. There's not a lot of sensationalist headlines and not, actually getting shit wrong, which, I was watching this video about this mass grave supposedly on this island in New York that the article made it seem like this is never done for, like, I think it was because of unknown people that are unknown or not anonymous, so unknown people that don't have people who are not been identified, who were getting killed from this, and then they were on this island. And the article acted like this island was never used before for this kind of a thing, when every week, I guess, there were unidentified people put on this island. And that was I'm not going to say the video producer of who said this, but it was a pretty interesting analysis of how the media can kind of exacerbate the hysteria towards this. But so yeah, recently on Tucker Carlson there was a debate about going to church. So my opinion is that if people want to assemble, why not have like a third option for them other than they have to go on the internet or they have to meet in person? Maybe they can meet in person, but they can, sign something that states that, they're liable for their own health and own life, and, maybe they have to quarantine themselves, like I said. I just think this whole thing has just been a lot of, I think there's probably going to be, I predict that some of this is going to be seen as an overreaction, some of it, or at least the attitude about it. Maybe not the actual laws or moves made by states or governments,
But in actuality, it'll probably be that there is an overreaction to some extent regarding the death rate and how prevalent it is. I mean, come on. Yeah, if there's that many people walking around asymptomatic, then there's definitely been an overreaction. But time will tell, you know. We'll have to see. But we got to be vigilant, not only towards a virus, but towards people in power possibly using this and doing bad things with it. So that's all I got to say. Please like, subscribe, share, masturbate, whatever, to this video. It's a sound of my voice, if you're into that sort of thing. I will see you later, and stay safe and social distance and wear a mask all the time. And just hide in your home the rest of your life and not take any risks. No, I'm just joking. Either way, stay safe.